The most perplexing thing that comes to me often from my clients is, look, we love each other. We like each other. We've actually got a really solid partnership. I want to want sex. Why don't I?
Welcome to Carrie On, the show where we explore reinvention, self-discovery, and empowerment before, during, and after midlife. I'm your host, Carrie Murray. It's time to keep our head above the chaos and carry on. You never know where you'll meet the people that change the way you see yourself. I met our guest today at all places, a Beyonce concert. And after just 20 minutes of a great conversation, under the glow of Bay's disco horse, I knew immediately that this audience absolutely need to hear from her. Darshana Avila is an erotic wholeness guide who helps women and non-binary folks reclaim their erotic selves as a source of power, creativity, and liberation. But how comfortable are we really in our eroticism? Many women over 40 find themselves more than ready to release the confines of shame, trauma, and cultural conditioning around sex and their bodies. After childbirth, pelvic floor issues, menopause, endometriosis, and maybe even a hysterectomy, we often have to reintroduce ourselves to our bodies, maybe even for the first time. And when the healing dust finally settles, we sometimes wonder, is this it? Or is it just going to be me and my literature novels for the rest of my life? Am I truly worthy of pleasure? Welcome, Darshana.
Oh my gosh. Okay, seriously, favorite introduction ever. Thank you, Carrie. I am delighted to be here. I just need to basically walk around with you all the time.
I'll just be your fan with a sign saying,
Please.
You need to meet this woman. How are you? Welcome.
I am well, thank you. And I'm really delighted that we're here having this conversation finally, because that concert was like 5-6 months ago.
I know. And gosh, if I could pay for the rights of a Beyonce song right now, I'd intercut it with this, what's going to be a fabulous episode, because I'm super excited to dive into exactly. First, tell everybody what exactly erotic wholeness, wellness is.
Yeah, that's a wonderful place to begin. So for starters, it's everything you think it is, and it's nothing that you think it is, dear listener. So eroticism, many of us hear that word and immediately we think sex. And so you wouldn't be wrong, but you also would have your blinders on real tight if that's all you're thinking about. So I invite you to consider eroticism more aligned with life force energy. So that means it's our creativity. It's the things we're passionate about. It's how we are dynamic and alive and engaged. That can show up in the bedroom. That can show up in your activism, your professional life, how you tend relationships in community and family. So our eros really is what is infusing life into all that we do. And then wholeness, that draws from a body of work called Soulcraft, which I'm not going to give you like the whole background story, but it's been a big influence in my life. And like the basic premise is most of us are walking around feeling pretty fragmented a lot of the time. I'm sure you can relate to that. Yeah. And we have parts of ourselves that might come to the forefront in a certain circumstance. And this is why we can feel like a boss, for instance, in our personal life, but completely lost in intimacy, just as an example, right?
Yeah.
So wholeness is a nod to really getting to know and integrate all of the parts of ourselves so that we can lead from our most like authentic, deep well of wisdom within. And that doesn't happen when we're shaming and blaming and trying to like punish the parts we don't like. It actually is what's going to happen when we start to really bring them toward us, consider what they need so that we can function from a place of more cohesion, wholeness. And that right there is how I came up with this, the thing that requires a lot of explanation, which is, what do you do? Erotic wholeness.
I love that. Obviously, when you're a little girl, you didn't grow up thinking, I want to help people with their erotic wholeness. So tell me, how did you get in? And I know you have a background in law. How did you get into this? Like, how did you find this calling?
Okay, two things. So no, as a little girl, I did not think that this is what I was going to grow up to do. However, were my parents still alive to tell the story, they would tell you that I was pretty precocious and definitely very curious about my sexuality. And bless them, I like to say my parents put the fun in dysfunctional in many, many ways. One of the things that they really did well is I grew up with a lot of permission to be curious about myself. They were not, I wouldn't say they were like overtly sex positive, which is a term that probably didn't exist when 5 decades ago. But it does exist now. And that meaning like that I have people in my life who are raising their children with like an incredible amount of transparency and healthy education and open conversations about their sexuality. My parents were somewhere in the middle. So they didn't shame me. They didn't prohibit me. They also weren't necessarily giving me the greatest education ever. And I was, like I said, curious and precocious. And I was also the person that all of my friends came to with questions. So while I did not set out for this to be my career path, it's kind of like, oh, right, that's where all of this was pointing since I was a wee little thing. And you mentioned law. I want to be clear. I had a corporate career. I thought I was going to go to law school, but I ditched that one. Thought that was going to be my path. I ended up in corporate America, didn't follow the legal field. And at a certain point in time, after a marriage and a divorce and a deep dive into my spirituality and a path of spirituality that at that time had a lot of very traditional and misogynistic overtones to it. So my sexuality didn't feel like it had a place there, but I was divorced in my late 20s and early 30s, dating, having a lot of sex, trying out different things. And I'm like, ooh, my sex is lighting me up. My spirituality is lighting me up. Could these things feel more connected? So that was really the inquiry that began to reveal itself to me. And at a certain point with the corporate career, I was like, okay, this is like draining my soul. Oh. Yes, it's a great salary. Like I had all the perks. I had the good salary. I worked from home long before it was cool. And right. I knew that there was something more. I mean, I know that sounds so trite, but it was a genuine sense that if I didn't exit stage left on that very mainstream status quo way of doing life, I was going to be miserable. Yeah. Like it would take me out at a certain point. And so bless the naivety that I had about what it would take to become an entrepreneur, because I just left my corporate career and I didn't even set out to do this work, but this is what life wanted from
me. Well, the universe is going to tell you, it's going to put it in front of you. Entrepreneurs, listen up. Are you stuck trying to DIY your website and marketing only to end up frustrated and spinning your wheels? Stacy Beeman of Bee Woman Marketing gets it. She helps passionate business owners like you ditch the overwhelm and go back to your zone of genius. From strategic websites and automated marketing systems to branding, logo design, messaging, and social media strategy, she handles it all. Stacy has supported coaches, consultants, nonprofits, authors, educators, and your girl, Carrie Murray. So, stop Googling how to embed a form or set up an email funnel and start growing your business. Visit bewomanmarketing.com and mention Carrie on, and you get 10% off of a strategy session with Stacy. Ready for TED is an 8-week program led by my friend, Tony Purry. She's a PR pro, executive media trainer, and yep, a TEDx speaker herself, who, by the way, was a guest right here on Carrie On, episode number 2. This guided experience is built just for women ready to clarify their message and craft a signature talk and share their big idea. Whether you're an expert, founder, or change maker, you'll expand your influence, raise awareness, and gain unshakable credibility when you hit the red circle. I've seen firsthand how Tony supports women through this process. It's remarkable. Spots are super limited. Apply now at readyforted.com and let Tony be your guide on the global stage. A lot of women who watch this show in their 40s and 50s, really start to feel disconnected from their body, almost betrayed. I mean, I was just having a conversation with my friend who's in her mid-50s, and she's like, I got my period again after 2 years of never having a period. So they feel betrayed. They feel like I've had all these babies, my mood swings, I'm divorced, I'm fatigued, I don't want to start dating, but how can erotic wholeness help them find home again in their bodies when we feel so, I know I feel a little bit betrayed by my body right now because of perimenopause, but we're becoming friends again.
That's beautiful to hear. And the thing is, like, I love that you're using that term betrayed by. I think that experiences of feeling betrayed or in ways that we actually have self-abandoned. And that's not to make anybody feel like they're responsible, guilty, culpable for that. But the way most of us are taught to be in relationship with our bodies, with our sexuality in particular, is not very self-honoring. So most of us never really had a deep, intimate, and authentic relationships with our bodies and our sexuality to begin with. And this is not to say that applies to everyone. I like to be real careful that nothing that comes out of my mouth is every person's experience. Of course, there's subjectivity. But most of us, particularly in the culture we live in, if you are born a girl and acculturated as a woman and you happen to be in our age range, right? If you're in your 40s or 50s, perimenopause, menopause, maybe newly post-menopause, like right in that midlife bubble, we grew up with a very, very clear message, implicit and explicit, that our bodies and our sexuality belong to somebody else. You would be the rare woman today who's in our age range that didn't get that kind of messaging, right? So performative sex for the pleasure of your partner, sex because that's what a dutiful wife does, sex because you think that that's how you're going to keep a partner in your life, right? Like we get a lot of real shit conditioning. And then we wonder why we're not interested in sex. We wonder why our bodies feel so foreign to us. And that's because we never really cultivated a relationship with Eros to begin with. We haven't been in relating with that vital life force energy that I spoke of before. Yeah. So what it has to offer is that, a big part of what I teach and guide that also dovetails so beautifully with the perimenopause and menopausal state. And this is who I support and work with as well. Or we talk to the same people, you and I, Carrie. It's that even though we hear a lot of like very negative chatter about the hot flashes and the loss of desire and the belly fat and all this.
Right.
And I'm not trying to gaslight anybody if you're going through those things. I mean, I'm up at like 3 a.m. every day. Like, it's like, like my hormones are like, hello. But it's also a time where when we have the proper guidance and the proper mindset, any of that performing for another person gone. The discernment about what I want and do not want, what I like and do not like, becomes so much clearer at this stage of our lives. We don't have the fucks to give anymore.
100%.
Yeah. And so we can hone that. We can really, really lean into that. And so much of the foundation of what I support my clients with, we begin first and foremost with nervous system tending. Getting you into a state where you can feel relaxed and receptive enough to begin to explore anything else. If we were to dive right into the sex end of the pool without that, it would just be more performing. It would just be more self-abandoning. So we have to start first and foremost with that sense of coming home to your body, actually knowing what it's like to feel relaxed and present. And then the next thing we do is we learn about consent. And we learn of more expansive vocabulary and do really measured experiments with the ways you like to be touched and how you like to move your body. And what does this feel like? What does that feel like? This is quite a bit of work that's going on before we get anywhere near anybody's genitals. Which somebody who's listening may not know that. I am Darshana Avila, aka the professional pussy stroker. And I do hands-on and hands-in work with my clients. It's a very unique way of working, and it brings that trauma-informed, very like nervous system, rejuvenation-oriented side of the spectrum and the more sex and intimacy focused side of the spectrum together in this very deeply experiential way. And what happens time and time again with my clients is that, first of all, a very common experience is they have a massive orgasm and then end up like sobbing from the depths of their soul on the other side of that. But it's this gorgeous catharsis that is not often about one particular thing. It's that undifferentiated weight the grief, the sorrow, all the years spent in that performative, self-abandoning way. And then like that, the floodgates release and all that pent up energy that has been keeping you stagnant and flat and disconnected from your creativity and believing maybe that you don't like sex and all these other things. It's like, oh, wait a second. There's a whole new scope of possibility here. And when we clear out that stagnancy, then we really get to be super curious and creative in how do you like to be intimate? And what's it like when you're so connected to that power that is your life force energy that you can be thoughtful and intentional about channeling it, whether that's into your professional life, into your activism, into the things that you are really passionate about in the world. So what I'm speaking to, if it sounds like, yeah, right to somebody who's listening or like pie in the sky, I really want you to know at this point, I've been in private practice for 11 years. I mean, hundreds, if not upwards of 1,000 at this point in time, people who I have directly worked with and guided in this way. I know it for myself. And so really the thing that I would want to say in the vein of like rah-rah empowerment is this is possible for you. This is a choice, you know, and no shame if you don't feel ready to make said choice. But for the ones who are listening who are like, whoa, you know, like I want that, like, great. Because it begins with your desire. It begins with your clarity that you want a different experience than the one that you had.
Yeah, and I think maybe even before that is their curiosity.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
you know, I can decide that I can have better intimacy, and I don't actually need that. I think what's really profound is you work with individuals as well as couples, and that
I would say I work mostly with individuals.
Oh, do you really?
And that I do. I do support couples, yes. And more of my clients, it goes in waves, but more of my clients lately have been individuals. And the thing there, it's like, I want you to imagine us as 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, right? In that beautiful like puberty, adolescence, newly opening up to the fact that we are sexual beings. Could you imagine if we existed in a culture where we were initiated into that from the center point being us?
Oh my gosh.
This is what feels good in my body.
Yeah.
This is how to negotiate for differences in desire. Saying no is a complete sentence where our partners, whatever their gender, whatever their acculturation, where we all were given information about how to center consent and mutual pleasure. And how to be able to say, oh, okay, you're not into that? Cool, let's pivot to something else. How can we get creative? How can we be curious? I love alliteration, by the way. So yes, the seeds. Creativity, curiosity, compassion goes a long way. Like we want to be compassionate with ourselves, with our lovers. Clarity goes a long way. And most of us are desperately lacking clarity about what actually feels good to us. We don't know ourselves in that way. And once you do, game changer.
Especially because clarity makes you a better communicator. So now you're able to communicate, you know, amid stop,
Yes.
Hold on, bro, let's switch it up and move this way. Or is that where some people were like, okay, I guess this is us having sex. All right.
Yeah. And to your point, it's like most of us have a very, very specific script of what sex is like. And it centers, especially if you're coming from a heterosexual context, it's P and V. Maybe there's a little kissy, touchy up front, but it's P and V. And it's like, okay, penis is done. We're done. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, let's be honest. Most of us, I think, that are more inclined toward feminism and women's empowerment might want to say, no, that's not how my sex goes. And some of us, that might be the truth. But for many of us, that is what our lived experience has been. And so when I spoke earlier about like the dissonance that we might feel of like our sense of power comes online in a certain context, but not in others, this is the typical dichotomy that most of the women that I support are experiencing, because they are badasses. They have really devoted themselves to their professional lives, to raising up their children, to doing all these things. And I want to say for the parents out there, the raising up of the children part, time and time again, my clients who are parents are not only just in the wow factor about what their inner child gets to now experience, but it really does change how they want to talk to their kids about sexuality and intimate relationship. It inspires them to want to bring the very culture that I'm speaking of here, this culture of erotic wholeness that is about consent and pleasure. They want their kids to have that then. So it's a ripple effect. Even though the exploration might be a very personal, individual one, it is always going to impact everyone and everything that you are in a relationship with.
Yeah. And kids I have a son who's 15 and a daughter who's 18. And I can tell you this, when in school, sex education has never really been education, but more than like a biology class. But what they really emphasize now, more than I went to high school in the 90s, is honestly, it's the safety. You don't want to get AIDS. Yeah. It's fear. You don't want to get this disease. This is going to kill you. You have to have condoms. You can't use birth control. You can't get pregnant. You might not be able to get an abortion now. Like it's very much fear. So yeah. It almost scares them. And, Gen Zers are having sex later. I think that has a lot to do with being online and everything. But you bring up a good point in like creating an open dialogue within yourself and your partner. So then it can help with your children. I mean, what are your thoughts on this new generation coming up, and what's their sexual revolution going to look like if everybody's online?
I mean, I agree with you that the fear mongering that has been centered in sex education is really problematic. For our generation, it was more, at best, we might have learned about reproduction. Right. So that the mechanics of here's how that works. And probably some version of like abstinence, yes. But like, just don't do this. Then progressively, as you mentioned, like more about how to have safer sex, to use contraception, to be mindful of STIs. But again, even with that, there are ways to educate about that take the shame and the stigma, that take the fear out of it, that empower us with accurate knowledge about how to keep ourselves and our partners safe. So it's like, if our teenagers today were getting that in conjunction with sex is beautiful. It is meant to be pleasurable. It is something expansive that you actually get to define on your own terms, as opposed to there being this one and only script that everybody has to follow. Education around consent, the anatomy part of it, not just being reproductive anatomy, which is important for the youngers, but like for us, I don't know about you, like that ship has sailed. Yeah, so I love to speak about the anatomy of our pleasure, the anatomy of our arousal. How do we actually have sexual engagement with ourselves and with other people that feels good? And it's, like none of this is rocket science, really. It's actually very, very simple, but profound in its simplicity, that when you are more, let's bring in our C words again, curious and creative, like there's so much possibility, and sex, you asked about the younger generation. I feel like, first of all, it's a subjective thing. Like, is it a good or a bad thing that they're having sex later? I don't know. Like that, I don't know. But what I do care about is that whenever they choose it, that generation hopefully gets to receive, if not in their public school, then through their aunties, their mamas, their wider community, like to get to have an indoctrination that is like, this is for your pleasure. This is meant to feel good. This is a gift that you get to give in exchange consensually. Like if that was how we were all oriented to our sexuality to begin with, I mean, I really do believe we'd be living in a different world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also, I know there's no Gen Zs watching this, but, for me, I've always reiterated to my kids, if you have questions about sex, don't ask someone who's never had sex. Like, don't ask a friend for advice. Ask someone who's older. And if it couldn't be me, your uncle, your...
And I think that's wise, but I'll give you a little anecdote. So I don't have children, but my brother does. And I am a very active auntie to my nephews and a whole host of chosen nibblings out in the world. And so my brother and I were at lunch with one of my nephews one day, the older of the two. He's now 13. And something came up around like sexuality. And my brother said to his son, "Who are you going to ask if you've got questions?" And he didn't miss a beat. He looked straight at me and he said, I'm going to my auntie. And my brother was like, what? Like all her, but that too is a piece of it. My nephews, who I have been indoctrinating with consent culture their entire lives in age appropriate ways. And the most simple one is like, do you like how I'm touching you? Do you want me to do it differently? Do you want me to touch you? Oh, you don't want a hug? Cool. Yeah. I've been teaching them body sovereignty their whole lives. I have been modeling through my relationship with them that I really value hearing their truth. I don't get angry. I don't retaliate, even jokingly. If they're like, don't touch me, I don't touch you. And they know what I do for a living. There's no secrets. So my nephew was 11 at the time of that conversation. And he knew exactly who to go to. Just saying.
Just saying.
My brother's advice.
I mean, that's pretty smart. I mean, and teaching consent, was definitely something, again, we weren't ever really taught or anything.
No.
I just love that you're able to have those open dialogues, because I can remember even growing up and being like, give your uncle a kiss, go sit on his like being forced into, affection, and like, this is, you have to do this. You have to go kiss your grandfather and everything. And just thinking back now, I always made it up to my kids, like, if, oh, grandma's here, let's give her a hug if you want to give her a hug. And then just being so insulted if I didn't force my kid to give them a hug and kiss.
And I want to connect this back to us, to our generation, because while you did what you could to give your children some choice, most of us didn't have that. Right. And so where does that connect to what's going on for us in our 40s and our 50s, or even, earlier on? Like, what I see a lot, many of the women who are in like long-term marriages with men, the most perplexing thing that comes to me often from my clients is, look, we love each other. We like each other. We've actually got a really solid partnership. I want to want sex. Why don't I?
Yeah.
And it's a vestige of that. It's because the what I'm looking for a word here, like our consciousness around it, our acculturation around it is one of obligation as opposed to choice. Mm. And many of us, even in loving relationships, may not feel confident to choose, I do or do not want to relate with you, to choose the ways in which I am intimate with my partner. There's often still just a defaulting to, well, this is mostly for you. So, and what ends up happening is over time, a withdrawal. The woman is no longer really interested or available for sex, or she's tolerating and enduring, which is not consent. So it's a nuanced thing. Even though you might be saying, yes, I will have sex with you, if you're like gritting your teeth consciously or unconsciously through that, you're not in a consensual dynamic. End of story. Yeah. And I imagine that if asked, most of these people, and it's true for my clients, like, they want consent with their partners. They want mutual pleasure. They want for sex to feel affirming and enlivening for both. They just don't know how to get there on their own.
Yeah.
That's where a guide comes in. And that's what I'm here for.
Boom. So you're helping them build their life with confidence. Because, it takes a little bit of confidence and bravery to be like, yeah, I want to have sex with you, but I not necessarily that way. Like, I know I love you for 20 years and we've been doing it this way, P to V. But now I want to do the V's first. Like,
yep.
How would you say, even in being married after 20, 30 years, how do you guide those couples into like that confidence and conversation, more C's?
Yeah, more C's. Well, you said an important one earlier, communication. Mm-hmm. And it is, like I help my clients, whether I'm working with them individually or if I'm working with the couple. And in those instances, oftentimes it is easier to work as a couple, because then the burden does not get placed on who I'm supporting to go back and have to teach everything to the other partner. And then it's like, that's a lot of emotional labor. And you know how it goes. Sometimes we really can't hear something